everybody, welcome to chapter 10 lesson 4 of our three-dimensional shapes. So just like we had talked about before with our two-dimensional shapes, when you combine them you make a special shape called a composite shape. So when you put two or more shapes together, you compose a new shape, which is a composite shape. Now we can do the same thing with our three-dimensional shapes as well. We can put a few of our three-dimensional shapes together and make new composite shapes, just like we have set up on page 731. So if you haven't already, make sure that you have your math book out, you have a pencil, and we are starting off on page 731, and your first page is going to look a little bit like this, what I have up here. So if you need to go grab that stuff, go ahead and pause this and then come back. Alright, so we're looking at our shapes right up here, and we have this one, these two shapes put together, stacked up on each other, and we need to decide which two shapes are in this composite shape. So is it going to be our cube, rectangular prism, or cone? So first we're going to look at the big one that's starting us all off. So when I look at that, I can see that the face of it is a square, and it looks like all the other faces are about the same size. I don't really see any rectangles in that. So I know that that is a cube. A cube is one of our three-dimensional shapes that has 6 square faces. So we're going to go ahead and circle cube. Now we need to figure out what our second shape is. Is it a rectangular prism or a cone? So when I look at my second shape, I can see, that it has a point up here and then a circular face down here. Now the shape that I know that has one vertex and one face is going to be my cone. So I'll circle cone. And it's not our rectangular prism. So we have a cube and a cone to make this composite shape. Now we need to do the same thing for the bottom one. So we have this big long shape down here and then another shape stacked on top of it. So we need to decide if there's a rectangular prism, cylinder, or cone in this composite shape. So it's going to be 2 of those. One is going to be crossed out. So I'm going to start at the bottom again since I want to work my way up. So I'm looking at this face here, and that's a nice, I got 2 long sides and 2 short sides, which means I have a rectangle face up front, which means it cannot be my cube, right? Because my cube, like this one, has 6 square faces, no rectangular faces. And the only shape, three-dimensional shape that I have that has a rectangular face is my rectangular prism. So I'll go ahead and get that one circled. Alright, now we need to see what our second shape is. So my second shape, it has these 2 sides right here and then a circle. Excuse me.
It's on me.
A circle on the top and a circle on the bottom. So the three-dimensional shape that I know of that has 2 circular faces is my cylinder, and I don't have any vertices on that. So I'm going to circle my cylinder. So I have a rectangular prism right here on the bottom and a cylinder right here on the top. And I don't see any cubes, so I'll cross that one out. Alright, when you get that all figured out, go ahead and turn to the next page and we will start working through that together. Alright, so we're on page 732 now, and we're going to go over a little bit what the three-dimensional composite shapes are going to look like, or how you build them, and we're going to kind of take it apart in our head and find out which shapes are used to make our three-dimensional composite shapes. So at the top of your page, it says you can put together three-dimensional shapes to make other composite shapes. So they had a rectangular prism and 2 cylinders. And so they took those 2 cylinders, set them down on the bottom, and then put the rectangular prism on top. So they're just kind of stacking up their shapes to see what different kind of shapes they can make out of it. So here they took those 2 rectangular prism, or 2 cylinders, and put that rectangular prism right on top. And so it's going to look a little like this. Now number 1, we're looking at this shape here, and we're trying to figure out which 3 shapes, which three three-dimensional shapes are used to make this new shape. So what we're going to do is, like we did in the beginning, we're going to work our way from the bottom and work our way up. So the first shape I see has a rectangular face. Ooh, that was a bad outline, but it has a rectangular face, and it has 6 faces. So my first shape, I know, since it has a rectangular face, must be a rectangular prism. So I'll circle that one first. Then I go up to the next shape. So my next shape has these 2 circular faces, but I don't see any vertices. So that looks a lot like my cylinder right here. So I'm going to circle that one. And the shape on top of that shares that circular face, and it has 1 vertex. So it has 1 circular face and 1 vertex, which will be my cone. So I'll circle that one, and I did not use my cube at all. Number 2, we have 2 shapes making this composite shape. So first we're going to work at the bottom. I'll trace my face so that I know what I'm working with. Now when I traced it, I found a square face. And it looks like all of those faces are the same size. So they must be part of a cube, because our cube has 6 square faces. So I'm going to go ahead and circle my cube right here. Now my next shape is stacked right on top. It looks like it has 1 vertex and it has a circle face. So my shape that I know that has 1 vertex and 1 face is going to be my cone. So I'll circle my cone right here. I did not use my sphere, and I did not use my cylinder. Alright, number 3, we're going to work on the bottom, trace that face that's pointing towards us. There we go. And when I traced it, I saw that I had 2 long sides and 2 short sides, which means I'm working with a rectangle here. So since I'm working with a rectangle, it must be in my rectangular prism. So I'll circle that. Then I'll work from my left over. So my next one, when I trace that first face, it looks like a square, but let me look at the other one, see if they're about the same size. And it looks like it is, so it looks like it might be my cube, and I'll circle my cube. And then my last shape here, it has those 2 lines coming down, and then it has 1 circular face, 2 circular faces. The shape that I know that has 2 circular faces and no vertices is my cylinder. So I'm going to circle my cylinder. And I did not use my cone at all, so I can go ahead and cross that one out. Alright, so now that we've worked through this one together, I want you to go to the next page, page 733, and you're going to be doing the same thing. You're going to be looking at 4 different composite shapes, and you need to circle which 3-dimensional shapes are used to make those composite shapes. Now, the last one, number 7, is a little bit of a trickster. They want you to actually circle the shape that is not used. So 4, 5, and 6, you're going to circle the shapes that are used to make those 3-dimensional shapes, just like what we did right here. And number 7, you're going to circle the one that was not used, like how we X'd out the ones that we didn't use. On number 7, you're going to circle that one that wasn't used. When you're all finished with that, come back here and we'll review it together. Ready? Pause. Alright, so now that you've finished it, let's go ahead and review and see which shapes were used to make those composite shapes in the first 3 ones, and which one was not used in the very last one. So let's look at number 4. We've got a shape that looks kind of like this. Now, like we've been doing, I'm going to work from my bottom up as I try and figure it out. The first thing I'm going to do is trace that flat face in the front so that I know which face or which shape my face is, because that most of the time will give us the answer as to which three-dimensional shape that we're working with. So this one, I have a rectangular face, which means that it must be my rectangular prism involved. So we'll go ahead and circle that one. All right, my next shape, I can see these two lines right here, and then at the bottom I can see that it has a circle. Now I don't see it pointed like my cone. It looks like it's going straight up like my cylinder. Also, my cone has that point right here, and it'd be a little difficult to stack this shape on top. So I'm gonna say that's my cylinder. And then my very, very top shape, I'm gonna trace that face again, and I have a rectangle, so that must be my rectangular prism again. So my rectangular prism and my cylinder made up this composite shape. I'm gonna cross out my cone. Number 6, I've got this shape, kind of looks like a microphone, doesn't it? All right, so same thing as before, we're going to work our bottom up. So I've got my shape right here with the circle at the bottom, and the only thing that kind of matches that is my cylinder right here. Now it's not my rectangular prism there because I don't see any of those other faces, and my bottom face is a circle, not a square or rectangle. And then my next one, I have a circle right here and then a circular face in the middle. And so that must be my sphere. So a sphere, if you take it apart and break it apart in the halves, you'll see 2 circles. So that's going to be that shape right there. So I'm going to circle my sphere and cross out my rectangular prism. Okay, now we're going to work on number 6. So once again, we're going to work our bottom up, and we're still trying to figure out which shapes make up this composite shape. So I'm going right here, tracing this front face. My front face is a rectangle. I know this because it has 2 long sides and 2 short sides, and it has 4 vertices. So that matches with my rectangular prism. So I'll get that one circled right here. Then I'll work from the left over. So this next shape, I trace that front face, and I see a square, which looks like they all are squares, which looks like my cube. So I'm going to circle my cube. When I look at the next shape, it looks similar to that last one that I just traced, my cube. So I'll keep that circled, and I'll cross out this cylinder. This cylinder is not in this. Now number 7, I want to know which shape is not in my composite shape. So it's going to be the opposite of what we've been doing. So this bottom shape has that one pointed vertex, and it looks like this flat face right here is a circle. So that looks kind of like my cone right here. And since I'm not circling the ones that are in it, I'm going to cross that out. My next one, it has that circle there, and in the middle is a circular face, which is like my sphere here. So I'm going to cross that one out because it's in it. And I'm going to circle my cylinder. My cylinder is not in this shape here. Now, when you are finished making sure that you have all the answers right there, you're going to go to the next page, and you're going to work through a few word problems. So the first one, number 8, says, how many faces are there all together in the shapes used to make the composite shape shown? So how many faces are there all together shown in the shapes to make the composite shape shown? So look at that composite shape and count out how many faces there are all together in the whole thing. Then number 9, you want to circle the shapes that you can stack a cube on. And then explain to a friend why you cannot stack a cube on any of the other shapes. So only circle the shapes that you can stack your cube on top of. Then number 10, it says, Angie built this composite shape. Describe another composite shape she can build using these shapes. So Angie built this composite shape. Describe another composite shape she can build using these shapes. So go ahead, work through those ones, and when you're all finished with that, come back and we can review it on the board. Ready? Pause. All right, now that you finished, let's take a look and see how we did. So number 8, we wanted to know how many faces were in this composite shape altogether. So what we're going to do is take it apart. So the first shape I have right here is a cube, and my cube has 6 faces. So I'm going to write down 6 for my cube. Now my next shape is a cone, and I know that a cone only has 1 face. So I'm going to do 6 plus 1. 6 plus 1 is going to give me 7. So all together there are 7 faces in this composite shape. Now the next one, number 9, we wanted to circle any of our shapes that you can stack a cube on top of. So in order to stack a cube on top of it, it needs to have a flat face on the top. So my cylinder, I could probably stack a cube on top of it because it has a flat circular face. So I can stack that one. I can stack a cube on top of my cube because it has that flat face on the top. Now my cone has this point on the top, and so if you try and stack something flat on something that is pointy, it's just going to fall over from one side or the other. So we won't be able to stack on top of our cone. Same thing with our sphere. If you try and stack something on a circle, or try stacking a book on top of a ball or something like that, same thing. On top of it, it's just going to fall from one side or the other. So we can't stack on top of our sphere. Our last one is our rectangular prism, which also has a flat face over here. And since it has that flat face, you can stack something right on top of it, no problem. So I'm going to circle that one. So we have our cylinder, our cube, and our rectangular prism that we could stack a cube back on top of. Now the last one, it says that Angie built this composite shape right here. And we want to describe another composite shape that we can make based on the shapes that she has. Now you don't have to come up with an actual name for the shape, you just have to describe the order that you'd be putting it. So something that we could say is that we can make a shape with a cylinder, and then a cube on top, and then the sphere on top of that. So we'll just switch our cylinder and our cube around. So we're gonna say a shape. Shape has our long A sound in it. So let me fix my P. A shape with a cylinder, then a cube, and a sphere on top. So a shape with a cylinder, then a cube, and a sphere on top. And this is a comma right there. When you finish up with all of this and making sure that that's all right, you're going to move on to that My Homework page. Those are going to be pages 735 and 736. You're going to work through those, so you're going to be circling the shapes that are used in that composite shape in the beginning for problems number 1, 2, 3, and 4. for problems 1 and 2. And then for problems 3 and 4, you're going to circle the shape that is not in that composite shape. So the one that does not appear in that composite shape, you are going to circle. And the number 5 is going to say, I am made of a 2-dimensional shape that are stacked. One of my shapes has one face. The other has 2 faces. What composite shape am I? So write down which 2 shapes are involved in that composite shape. And number 6, you're going to do a practice test question, which is going to ask you how many faces do a cube and a cylinder have in all. So just like how we solved out this one, you need to take it apart, find out how many faces are in both of those shapes combined, and fill in that dot. When you finish up with my homework, go ahead and take a picture and submit that to the assignment and turn that in so I can take a look at it. All right, see you on the next lesson.